New figures suggest almost 1 in 3 Jewish people have considered leaving the country due to racism, despite an apparent fall in anti-Semitism. More than half of Britain's Jewish population say they feel let down by the institutions intended to protect them, and 83% believe the Labour Party is too tolerant of anti-Semitism. For more on this, I'm joined from Tel Aviv by the campaigner Jonathan Sacerdoti. And Jonathan, I just want to say you are in Tel Aviv at the moment, but you do live in London. The new figures suggest that 1 in 3 Jewish people have considered leaving the country due to racism. Is that something that you can relate to?
Absolutely. In fact, full disclosure, I was the co-founder of the charity that made this report and have campaigned for years as a campaigner against anti-Semitism, though I'm no longer involved in their work. It's necessary to say that while many Jewish people, as shown in this survey, have expressed the thought that over the last 2 years they've considered their future in the UK, it certainly doesn't mean that they're about to leave, and it doesn't mean that the situation is dire. In fact, most Jewish people that I encounter every day say that Great Britain is a very good place to be Jewish, that they enjoy freedoms and their day-to-day life is pretty good. That doesn't mean, however, that their fears are unfounded. Jewish people are used to threats against them thanks to their history, and we're not just talking about the history of the Second World War and the Holocaust, but also recent history where Islamist terrorists have attacked and killed Jews across Europe.
You say it may be a good place for Jewish people to live, but over a third of people in that survey said that they felt they've needed to conceal their Judaism. Is that an acceptable way for people in Britain in 2017 to live?
No, let me make this absolutely clear. When I started that surveying in the campaign against anti-Semitism, I wanted to find out exactly how Jewish people felt and how British people felt about Jews. So it's wrong if there is any anti-Semitism in society, but then I suppose it's also inevitable that there will be some level of racism in any society. What we've got to look at is how to improve the figures. So these statistics show that the small increase in British people's opinions in favour of Jewish people, that is to say they agreed with fewer anti-Semitic statements put to them, but Jewish people surveyed in a slightly less accurate survey, one that was a bit more self-selecting on the internet, and that's because it's very hard to survey Jews quite as accurately. The report itself acknowledges that it may not be as representative as the YouGov figures on the wider population, but a third of those people thinking that they can't show their Jewishness in public, people saying that they have considered over the last 2 years the idea that they may not have a future in the UK. These are worrying things that the government and the police and the Crown Prosecution Service need to take seriously. They need to make sure that Jewish people and all other minorities feel safe within the UK.
So how does a society go around fighting anti-Semitism?
Well, Kimberly, it's really important that it's not just Jewish people who are fighting anti-Semitism, and that really is often the mission that campaigners are on. It's to show society that we need to stand up for each other. There needs to be a level of solidarity. It's comforting to see that since the last statistics published in a similar survey, British people have reduced their agreement with any anti-Semitic statements, stereotypical statements that were put to them to see whether they agreed or disagreed. That's a positive sign. We now need to see that reflected elsewhere in society. The government is very good at saying that it's going to take anti-Semitism seriously. It's put money into protecting Jewish people, but we need to see more rigorous prosecution. We need to make sure that there's no sensitivity or fear around prosecuting anti-Semites, perhaps because it might be seen as somehow racist to prosecute those attacking Jews because of their own minority status in some examples. And these statistics also show, for example, that Jewish people consider Islamist terrorism to be by far and away the biggest threat to them, and then far left terrorism. That's not to negate the importance of right-wing anti-Semitism, the kind of which we've seen in neo-Nazi rallies, including in Charlottesville, but it does mean that we need to focus intensively on those areas which are most likely to threaten Jewish safety, security and life.
Jonathan, I want to pick up on what you said about the government, because more than half of the people who were surveyed said that they feel that the government isn't doing enough to tackle the situation. But there was also a lot of criticism for the Labour Party and the way in which Jeremy Corbyn has addressed anti-Semitism.
Well, in my opinion, the Labour Party has acted shamefully over this issue of anti-Semitism. Jeremy Corbyn commissioned the Chakrabarti report by Shami Chakrabarti, who was then promptly put in the House of Lords by him. It did look incredibly dodgy to most people. It looked like she was rewarded for whitewashing this issue. Jewish people, for many years, have recognised that there is anti-Semitism on the far left of the Labour Party and the far left of society. It now happens that we have a leader of the Labour Party who comes from that fringe part of the party, and that has therefore been mainstreamed. That's something which really has put fear into many Jewish people who, let's remember, traditionally, statistically, have been Labour voters. Jewish people have, on the whole, been on the left. So if they are feeling that way about the Labour Party and they feel the Chakrabarti report was not adequate at dealing with this problem, then it's again something that ought to be taken seriously by Labour politicians and all politicians across the board. This is not a problem just for Jewish people. It's a problem for our society when minority groups like Jews, who are often the canary in the coal mine, feel threatened and have any cause to even slightly consider their future in the country.
Okay, Jonathan Sacerdoti talking to us from Tel Aviv. Thank you, Jonathan. Well, let's go live now to Barcelona, where